Okay, we've started the stream. I'm going to join the phone call. I did, but you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, all right. Good morning. I'm co-chair Margie Bukowski, and I'd like to welcome you to the August 3rd, 2023 Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We are streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. We also have an option for the public to listen and comment live by phone. Please dial 855-925-82801 and use meeting code 7663 to listen in. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. We are glad you're there on this rainy day. Please be sure to mute your microphone. If you are not speaking, when you have a question or would like to speak, unmute your microphone. If you're using a phone, please remember to mute your phone, which is option 6, after you are done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Co-Chair Andy Barnett.
Good morning.
Vice Chair Brian Methvin.
Good morning.
Scott Adams.
Morning.
Emily Axman.
Here.
David Bartholomew. Is David not with us today? Okay. Barry Bialik.
Good morning.
Chris Day. I think he's gone too. Paul Heathman.
Good morning.
Tara Irby.
Good morning.
Dewana Little. Babs Phillip. Nuena Smith. And Antoinette Mosley.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, and myself, Margie Bukowski. I'm hoping that everybody has had the opportunity to read all of the action minutes from last month's meeting. And so if there are there any changes or additions or comments to those minutes from last month? If there aren't any, then I'm going to say that we vote on this item. Committee members, when I say your name, please say aye or nay. This list again.
Madam Chair, you might
Yes.
want to take a first and a second, just really quick.
A first and second
A motion.
motion. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Move to approve the action agenda.
Yeah,
Second.
I'll second. Oh,
great. Awesome. Going to take a vote now. Andy Barnett,
Aye.
Brian Methvin,
Aye.
Scott Adams,
Aye.
Emily Axman,
aye.
Barry Bialik,
Yep. Aye.
Paul Heathman,
Aye.
Tara Irby,
Aye.
and well, Antoinette doesn't get to vote. So, and myself, Margie Bukowski, aye. Okay, so now we have a little bit of a change to our agenda. We had a presentation that was going to be scheduled for this morning, but unfortunately our presenter is sick and is not able to be here to do that. So we're going to move on to the work plan items, which is on your agenda. And we're going to talk about the Connect report on committee stakeholder input on affordable housing and the scoring criteria. So I'll turn it over to Andy.
Thanks, Margie. As we've been looking at our work plan for this year, two of the key items were to provide feedback around the land use incentive grant program and the housing trust fund program. And one of the things that we knew we needed to really be able to make those recommendations was to have a little bit more community representation, community input around how we make, how those programs are affecting, particularly people whose housing choice is constrained by their income. So that really is the key constituency in many ways for the work that this committee does. And so the Connect team worked on developing a process to receive that community input and We're going to go through that a little bit more this morning, but we were really very pleased with the response that we heard from the community, and we have great information that we gathered to share with all of you from that work. I want to recognize, as we get started, I want to recognize the members of the Connect team that are AHAC members. Paul and Babs both did really incredible work around this, as did Emily Axman, who really carried the ball on almost all of this. And you're going to hear a lot from her in this presentation. This was really a very heavy lift and very skillfully done by Emily, supported as well by a couple of folks who are on the Connect team who are not AHAC committee members, Chris Joyelle and Garrett Rasick from Thrive. Both contributed a lot to the Connect team's discussion and to the work of this project. So I see Emily is getting the slides up on the screen, and we can spend a little bit more time going through each thing. But I wanted to set that up for you and recognize the great work that this team has done. This is really the first time, at least in the almost 6 years that I've been on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, that we have sort of proactively gone into the community seeking input from community members and stakeholders rather than, sort of waiting for folks to come back to us through the public comment process on decisions. So I think this is a really, it's a really great step for AHAC and a really important precedent for future activities of this committee. So what you'll see on the slide right now, sort of the purpose, why did we do this? I've hit that mostly already. The idea was to really make sure that we were thinking about the folks most affected by our affordable housing decisions and the city's affordable housing policy, those end users of affordable housing, as we were making decisions and recommendations to council, really making sure that we were being that community voice on affordable housing that is described in AHAC's charter. So I'm going to let Emily pick up here with a little bit of how we did this and what was involved. And I think you'll be really pleased with how that work came together. Emily?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. So the first part of the process was working within the Connect group. As a team, we identified 17 public goods. So the way that we came to these was taking a look at both the Housing Trust Fund and LUIG policies for how the scoring criteria works right now, what you get points for, what are the priorities in those. So pulling out those public goods, as well as taking a look at other material like equitable development, and from there listed 17 items. So a few of those being number of affordable units, the population served, so ranging from 60 to 80% AMI, length of affordability, voucher acceptance, unit size, number of bedrooms, energy efficiency, green building, accessibility for older adults, multimodal and transit access, proximity to jobs, located outside a low-income neighborhood, located near parks and public amenities, developer experience and project feasibility, converting market rate housing to affordable housing, resident community input in project planning, projects that avoid displacement of housing units or small businesses, and disadvantaged business hiring and contracting goals. So we felt like those were some of the top priorities in affordable housing. The second part of the process was to take a look at local stakeholders and try to identify people who we felt were intimately involved within the Asheville community, to see, what their thoughts were on a ranking of these public goods and what they're seeing residents and community members needing when trying to access affordable housing. So those groups included housing providers, social service agencies, community groups, Asheville's legacy neighborhoods, and other organizations working with older adults with disabilities. So we consolidated the Housing Trust Fund and Luigi into simple, hopefully simple to read, one-page PDF documents that we sent out. So one part of the process was to send out a survey to 30 plus of the organizations. So this is an example of this is the Luigi policy summary. The next slide shows the Housing Trust Fund. So what we're trying to do is explain what the scoring criteria entails, and then also give a case study. So this one took a look at Laurelwood Apartments. So for the email, we sent this out, asked them to take a look, and then follow up with an online survey where they would go through and rank those 17 public goods that we listed on the previous slide, which some people did comment is somewhat cumbersome, but for the most part, we got pretty positive feedback. So yeah, in the results came in. The top priority was number of affordable units, population served, 60% and under AMI, voucher acceptance, length of affordability, population served again, that one being 80 to 100% AMI, and then converting market rate housing to affordable housing. And we also found these to be true we did a roundtable discussion with 7 people within the housing community to get a better understanding of their perspective, as well as build on the online survey results. And I'm going to turn it back over to Andy to elaborate on the results. Maybe he's muted.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, trying to keep the background noise to a minimum, but
and I can keep going too if you want, Andy.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I really, you can see we were really focused on the scoring criteria as a part of these two programs, not the validity of the program themselves. That was just kind of outside of the scope of what we wanted to find out about. We really wanted to know of the things that we are valuing when we're ranking projects for funding. Does the ranking that we're using currently line up with what the community hopes to get from our investment in affordable housing, right? So all of those rankings choices that we make in scoring projects and deciding, what constitutes a quote unquote good affordable housing project, are fairly subjective. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were holding the scoring that we're currently using up against what was valued in the community. And it was really not at all surprising that we saw the highest scores. So the top 5 or so priorities that the community had were all around housing affordability. Not surprising because these are funds for the creation of affordable housing. So it would be odd to see the community looking for something to come out of our investment in affordable housing that wasn't affordable housing. But it also not surprising just because of the incredible housing deficit that we have nationally and in this community, just the lack of available units that are priced at a point that folks can afford. And so when we kind of asked that question in the focus group and the roundtable that Emily mentioned, people wanted to make sure that we understood that this focus, particularly on that top score for number of affordable units, that really kind of eclipsed a lot of benefits that people really felt like were important. So the fact that things are lower on the list behind that really says more about how difficult it is to find housing in Asheville than that other things are lower priority. So, I think probably half the responses to the survey rated number of affordable units as their highest priority. Not because everything else doesn't matter, but just because if we don't have units on the market for people, you know, to be able to access, the other things don't matter. But the other things really matter when we're thinking about how we create affordable housing. So that's an important point. I think it's easy to and I think Brian, you asked this question when I was sharing this information with Margie and Brian and Sasha before this meeting. You know, does that just mean that we can create a whole bunch of really terrible affordable housing units and that meets the goal? And I think it's important to say all of these things are important to people, but this shortage of housing that we face right now is really top of mind for people. The focus group folks also wanted to make sure that we understood, at least from their perspective, that respondents were likely not saying the number of affordable housing units in each incentivized development, right? So it's not so important that you know, a project that we invest public dollars into has a higher percentage of affordable units. It's about the total quantity of units that we're creating in the market to try to fill that supply deficit. There was also a very clear priority around the need for affordability for very low income households. And so you'll see, you know, the next two highest ranked criteria really get to, you know, housing that's deeply affordable. So a priority for below 60% of AMI and a priority around voucher acceptance, which is really the key way that we get to below 60% AMI. And as we met with the focus group, we heard lots of stories about how difficult it is to place a voucher. And this committee spent a lot of time talking about that, so I'm not going to belabor that point, but just to know that you know, what we've heard in public comment and what we've heard from presenters from the Buncombe County Rental Assistance Collaborative, you know, this groundswell around voucher acceptance is very real in the community, as is the priority for serving very low income households, particularly. Another thing that came clear in the survey and also in our focus group was a focus on preserving affordability. And that's something that the current programs don't really allow us to do very well. So as we think about kind of the policy implications of this community input process, we might want to be thinking about ways that we can incentivize the preservation of both naturally occurring affordable housing and housing units that we've already subsidized who might be coming to the end of their affordability period. And so we saw that in the rankings around you know, the high priority that people put around length of affordability and the question of converting market rate housing to affordable housing. When we followed up with the focus group, kind of what did people mean by this? Their concerns were around how do we keep naturally occurring affordable housing units in the supply of affordable housing through incentives, and how do we protect units that might be coming to the end of their affordability period so that they don't convert to market rate and become lost to the affordable housing supply. Further down the list, and I want to again go back to that first point and say, you know, people were not saying that locational factors didn't matter in affordable housing and in how we cite affordable housing units. But as we get further down into the line, we looked at locational factors. The locational factor that came to the top for many of the people that we talked to in the survey and in the roundtable was around transit access. So citing affordable housing near to transit lines is the most important priority within the community in terms of where we locate affordable housing, more so than proximity to jobs or green space again, focus group was, wanted us to remember that all of these things are important, but the more important piece is that transit access. Again, because so many, particularly of the very low income households, are transit dependent in our community. Again, I'm going to go through and just hit some of the high spots. If we look at some of the things that were maybe not direct housing community benefits, so not things having to do with the type or location of affordable units. The thing that really rose to the top within that cluster of criteria was avoiding displacement and disadvantaged business contracting goals on projects. Those really hit about the same spot, with about 25% of respondents ranking them in their top three. The focus group also suggested that community input in project planning probably needs to be higher than it scored, and that would kind of, in addition, getting community input in the project sooner would help with a lot of the other things that did rank higher, around siting decisions and depths of affordability and those sorts of things. We've talked a lot in this committee about the mix of unit sizes that's desirable in the community, and we really hoped out of this process that we would finally know the answer. Do we need 1 bedrooms? Do we need 3 bedrooms? Do we need 4 bedrooms? And what we did see that size and type of unit was a priority in the ranking. When we talked to the focus group about that and really tried to drill into that, it really depends on the particular population that an agency is primarily thinking about, or that a stakeholder group was primarily thinking about. Obviously, they're thinking about the housing needs of the people that they serve. So if you talk to someone who's mostly serving single older adults with disabilities, they're looking for 1-bedroom apartments with universal design features. If you're thinking about somebody who's working primarily with kids in schools, they're looking for those family-sized 2- and 3-bedroom units. I think the only clarity that came out of this for me was that a range of units, we should really be looking at projects that have a range of unit types, or creating a range of unit types across the portfolio of projects that we invest in any given funding cycle, and with a strong focus on making sure that units that incorporate universal design or that accommodate people with physical limitations is in the mix. And then the last thing that kind of conclusion that our team drew from this process was that we were surprised to see that developer and experience and project viability was ranked at the bottom of this list. That's something that we put a lot of stock in, I think, as we're reviewing projects and in our current rating systems. Is it likely that, once we make a commitment of public funds to a project, that the project's actually going to get built? Seems like a pretty straightforward and important criteria. It was surprising to see it come in kind of pretty much dead last in every single survey we got back. And what one community member said that was really striking to me in the roundtable was that if people don't see, if community members don't see a project as being something that's for them, if the affordability levels don't seem like they're within reach for them and the people that they know are struggling with housing, if they haven't been involved in the project planning, upstream, then they really might not. They really might undervalue the project's viability. Like, it doesn't really matter whether it gets built or it doesn't get built if it's not if community members don't see the project as benefiting them. And I thought that was just a really important kind of piece of wisdom from the community for us to end this section on, to just make sure that we're thinking about the need for community to connect with the projects that we are putting their money into, as being something that does benefit them and the people that they know are struggling with affordable housing. So I'm gonna, maybe this is a good time to stop and see if there's questions from the committee, and then I think we've got a couple more slides to round things out, thinking about what our next steps look like. But I'd love to take a second and see if there's questions that the committee has for either Emily or I.
Andy, I was interested to know, what community organizations, housing organizations you enlisted to take part of the surveying and the focus groups.
Yeah, so there is a in the document that's in the packet on this, we have the full list there. There were about 40 different organizations that we reached out to between the survey and the focus groups. We tried to hit both folks that are, kind of the usual suspects of housing organizations, groups like Mountain Housing and Community Land Trust, but also we tried to reach out to some groups that worked more directly with community and community members. So groups like SEMA and groups like Disability Partners, and Western Carolina Rescue Ministries, some of the folks who have direct contact with the people who need affordable housing more so than the people who are involved in providing affordable housing. So we try to get a range of that, and you can see the full list in that document.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Andy, we worked with Garrett at Thrive, and they helped a lot with compiling the stakeholder list. So big thank you to them too.
I'm having a problem pulling that up right now. I'm just wondering if you reached out to the new CEO at Asheville Housing Authority to get weigh in on that.
Yeah, we did reach out to the Housing Authority. We did have participation from the Housing Authority, not from the new CEO. We were doing this at about the time she was onboarding. So,
Okay.
But we did have input.
Yes.
I think from staff and from someone from the Residents Council.
Good.
And to that point, Chair, I'll say one other thing. We really, we spent a lot of time thinking about, I think our first preference would have been to have direct engagement from affordable housing residents or people who were looking for affordable housing, really to have that, not to have it come through an intermediary. And one of the reasons that we wanted to bring this project online right now was to start building up the base of community participation for the upcoming affordable housing plan. And hopefully that plan that's a little bit more resourced than kind of this all volunteer bootstrap effort that Emily basically carried the ball on. We just, as a volunteer community, we shouldn't have the resources to go out and do that sort of person to person kind of direct to the user community engagement. That's really the way community engagement should be done. And so we use these kind of intermediaries of agencies that we knew would have staff time to commit, and that we could reach out to, with the idea of laying the groundwork then with those organizations, that when we come to the affordable housing plan that Sasha's going to talk about next, they've had a chance to think about, oh, okay, here's how we could get direct end users of affordable housing, get their voices at the table in a different way. So we know that this is not the gold standard in community input of actually having community, impacted community members at the, voices at the table. this is a really good step in the right direction.
And I will just say for the people at home who can't read the chat, so let's try not to use that, please. Emily posted 36 email recipients and 11 roundtable invitees. There's some more on the list that Brian sent, which you can see at the end of the report. And the report is in your folder. I could post a link if you want, but there's a memo and a results piece in there too. So.
Emily or Andy, I'm curious to know if you asked the question, how long should affordability be? Because this is one of the issues that I know that's a very high priority. Unfortunately, today, due to costs of construction and cost of borrowing money and so on and so forth, but typically it's 20 years, maybe 30. And so I was wondering if you had any more input from people on what they thought it should be.
Our roundtable participants were really interested in tools that would create, very long-term affordability, ground leases, deed restrictions, things that created, permanent affordability. But again, their comments were mostly focused on the need to preserve affordable housing, both naturally occurring affordable housing and, the projects who might be coming to the end of their affordability period. So, thinking about the length of affordability in a newly incentivized project, I think that, reading between the lines from what I think I heard at that from the roundtable was as long as is possible, and then tools to help preserve that beyond its initial affordability period if necessary. I think people just, again, kind of my interpretation of what I heard, it seems like folks feel are really concerned about what feels like a very fragile affordable housing environment, like that we're potentially at risk of losing what we have already invested in.
I noticed that they talked about taking market rate apartments and turning them into affordable units. And as units get older and need rehabbing and stuff like that, I think that's something that we can really work towards. It takes a lot of collaboration with the developer or whoever owns it, but clearly there are any number of complexes around the city that are older and perhaps could be turned into affordable units.
Yeah, and folks in our focus group mentioned several apartment complexes that were kind of naturally occurring affordable housing, or have been a good source for more affordable rents for folks that were going through a change of management, going through needing major capital investment, and becoming not affordable anymore. So if we can figure out ways to get in front of some of those either the end of the affordability period for units, or the point in time where a complex might need an influx of capital for repairs and upgrades and deferred maintenance and that sort of thing, with an option to lock in affordability, that's a tool that again, when we start to think about the kind of policy tools and incentive tools that we might need through the housing plan, that's a place where I think we really, at least from what we heard in this survey and focus group, a place where we could really put some energy around thinking about what tools might work and how we monitor, the end of the affordability period, and, monitor existing properties for the point in time where they may need, an influx of capital for repair and renovation and that sort of thing, that we might jump in and say, if you'll guarantee affordable rents, we can, provide low-cost financing through, something or other. I don't know exactly what the policy tool might look like, but
Yeah.
It feels like there's some incentives that we don't have to hit some of the things that were important to community members.
Sasha, is there anything that you're aware of where that would prevent the city from taking a more active, like they might buy a complex that was ending its affordability period and then resell it to an affordable developer or try to redevelop it? The city itself, because we've talked about the city being a possible owner of some things at some time. I know we don't have that now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that legally there's a problem with it. I mean, I'll say that. I think there'd be a capacity issue. I think it might be easier to negotiate agreements with existing owners to extend their affordability, possibly with some funding maybe, or to have, a lot of cities right now, or I don't know if a lot, but there are cities right now creating what they call preservation funds for this purpose. And several of the firms we interviewed for the plan talked about helping cities stand up, figuring out all the policies and the program and how that gets funded. So that's happening right now across the city or across the country.
Okay. Anybody else? Any comments? No? Thank you, Emily and Andy and all those people that worked on this. It is incredible. It really is awesome. And you really went above and beyond whatever was initially expected. So thank you very much for your work. I'm sure that as we work with more of the consultants, that this information is going to be very valuable to them. So now we should move on to Sasha, who's going to talk to us about the affordable housing plan and what's happening there.
Sure, thank you. I'm going to give you all a broad update today. So we are not quite as far along as we might have thought we were. Our project manager with our consultants on vacation this week. So I'll just back up and remind you of what we've talked about before first. So as you all may remember, we released an RFP back in May. The deadline was June 12th. We had 5 proposals that came in that were deemed reviewable. We had, that met the requirements for proposing. We had, out of those 5, we had 3 great national firms that have great reputations who do this kind of work. Brian Methvin sat in on the selection panel, which was super helpful. We did kind of initial scoring with our committee, decided on those top 3, and then did interviews. So pretty standard, typical city process. So each team presented to us, and there was general agreement on the top 2, and really the top 1 most people felt good about, and that was Enterprise Community Advisors. Last week at City Council approved our ability to contract with them. We also were notified early June. So this is, since we haven't met since June, but we were notified that we were awarded a $50,000 grant from Dogwood Health Trust, which was very helpful. So it allowed us to expand our budget by about 1/3. And really have a more robust process, and which council also accepted last week. And so we're still putting just the final touches on the contract piece and the scope. We will probably have an internal kickoff with an internal city team in a couple weeks. And generally, I will say, well, actually, before I move on, in your folders, let me share my screen here. So in your folders, I did put the Enterprise's proposal. If you have a lot of questions about who they are, Enterprise has been around for 40 years in the housing business, and they are known nationally. They, actually help put together deals. So we are working with the branch of Enterprise that does technical assistance and does planning processes. So in this proposal, it has their team members, their experience. I think the city, well, the selection panel, I will say, selection panel felt really good about them because they bake equity into how they think about housing and how they operate versus a firm that is kind of tacking equity on because they know they have to do it for clients, if you will. So, because equity is hard to just tack on, you actually really have to bake it into how you think and how you evaluate things and what recommendations you make. So we're really excited about them. Enterprise is a nonprofit, and it's a very diverse team that we've got coming to Asheville. And the plan, generally, we don't have a full timeline yet. I will get that to you when I have that. But generally speaking, the plan is their first visit would be in September. We are going to start sending them all sorts of information. We'll start their data gathering and investigation, and we'll probably meet with them ahead of time and really talk through some things. So they want to, when they come here, they want to actually have a lot of data. So they're not just coming here with a blank slate. And then I think their plan is to come back in late October or early November before everybody kind of disengages for the holidays, to do a really in-depth, longer visit, lots of focus groups, interviews with folks. And that's where some of what Andy was talking about really links in. As a part of their budget, they have $5,000 for stipends. We want to make sure that people who have barriers to participation or incentives so that we can get to those hard to reach folks. That was really important to our city team as well. In the proposal, you'll see it's initially kind of scoped out for 12 months. We asked them to tighten that up because we're really starting bond planning right now for potential affordable housing bond. And with just all the different things that we do, we wanted to kind of shorten that timeline. So we're really looking at a 10-month timeline with the goal of getting to City Council for approval before the end of the fiscal year, if at all possible. So I think that's all I have. Unfortunately, I wish I had more to tell you, but we're really excited. It feels really good that the Connect committee work and the Thrive work that's wrapping up. Reparations is getting to a certain point. Missing middle is almost done. So all of these things are going to feed right into this plan, hopefully. So they will have lots of newish data and new discussions and input to start from. Does anybody have any questions? And Brian's here as well to talk.
How will AHEC be involved in working with the consultants?
Right, so there will be an advisory committee. We haven't totally figured that out yet, but AHEC will be involved with that, and we'll bring that back to you all in September. And I think regardless of how that exactly works out, what I did this really a really long time ago. I hate to even admit, 15 years ago, I project managed the downtown master plan, and I was at the downtown commission every single month giving them an update. And they had a number of members there, but they had a lot of involvement. So there's the advisory committee possibility, there's focus groups, there's interviews, there's all kinds of different roles. I mean, I hope with these processes, it's always tricky that if you're on an advisory committee, sometimes it's tempting to just not participate in other ways. So I really hope that you all come to public meetings, that you're there to listen to folks, and all of those kinds of things, and participate and give your own points of view as well. I can keep talking. You all know me. I can keep rambling on forever. I won't do that. But
Sasha, I'm kind of interested in Brian's take of the process. And
well, I think we got some really good proposals. There was a tremendous amount of commonality between the top two choices that we had. Both of them had done over 10 city affordable housing plans, which you could go through and look at them. They were very Enterprises plans were very action oriented and phased in approach. So these are things we recommend you do in 12 to 18 months. These are 18 to 36 months. These are beyond 36 months. And they did get to a high degree of specificity in their recommendations, which is good. Any other communities reports that we were able to look at. So I have high confidence that they'll do a good job. From a consulting structural perspective, they have a pretty large team that would be involved in this. And they have sort of one group that sort of does more of the public engagement phase and data gathering, and then another group that comes in follows up afterwards that gets more into the recommendation specific things and the report. So we may see some turnover in the team as the project progresses. But that's not a bad thing. It's just they have a segmented approach to doing some of the work. But I'm highly confident they'll do a good job. And I would think the one thing that, as Sasha mentioned, we're trying to push them on the time frame. They originally laid out a 12-month time frame, and we're trying to get it done in 10 rather than 12. And the only reason for them saying it would take 12 is that historically, in working with municipalities, they have been slow to produce documents and organize meetings and facilitate conversations with developers and things like that. And so I think that's one of the roles that AHAC can play, is making sure we grease the wheels along the way to make sure the project happens in a timely manner.
And they actually also said that sometimes it's staff being able to respond, it actually slows them down as well, which I know I've seen that when the consultant gives you a draft, like how long does it take you to get back to them can really affect their work. So I do just want to add on to what Brian said really quickly, that the thing I love about Enterprise, and this is probably true of the other firms, but because they have so many years of experience in these different branches of their company, that so they can reach out to people who are actually involved in real estate investing in their own company and kind of get live, actual on the ground feedback. Their company's not just a consulting firm, they're really active in real estate deals around the country. So. Other questions or? Just as a quick reminder, what they'll be doing is doing some updates of our data, looking at the Bowen report and doing some updates there. They will be kind of picking up the ball on the WEEG and Housing Trust Fund and city-owned land and evaluating how we've been doing, making recommendations for changes on those programs. And then also looking at, like, are there new things we should be doing, like a preservation fund or a NOAA? And then if we have a bond, how should, to me, the big questions are, what should we be prioritizing as a city? Like, should we be, is 60% AMI like our goal? Is it 30%? What is our focus? And I think the bedroom question, I hope they can help us resolve. And then lastly, like, what's our roadmap for implementation? And if we have a bond, how should we spend those funds? So.
Well, thank you, Sasha. I guess we will let you just keep continuing and talk about CED and the Affordable Housing Division update.
Oh, sure. For my division, I guess I would say I'm recruiting folks for my position, the Affordable Housing Specialist. I've gotten a number of applications. I'm going to start doing an initial interviews, hopefully next week or soon. And from a department-wide, I'll just do staffing first. We have Kimmy Hunter. I don't know if any of you know her. She's a realtor. She's starting as our real estate manager next Monday, so we're super excited about that. Promise Bozeman, who's been in our department, has been promoted and is now running the Kayla program, and she's doing a great job. She was the interim Kayla director over the summer. She did an amazing job. They just did their kind of closing ceremony program last Friday. Super inspiring. Those kids are amazing. I couldn't believe like how amazing they were. And then we have another community development analyst too that's starting near the end of August. we still have some vacant positions in our department, and we're continuing to kind of recruit and interview aggressively as we can. Other updates, bigger picture, since we haven't met since June. June 22nd, City Council approved 319 Biltmore, the conditional zoning for that project. So that's moving forward. They have to now go back to final TRC with, more detailed plans for the project. And we're working on a draft agreement with them. On June 22nd, also City Council approved the recommendation to temporarily suspend applications and awards for micro unit apartments. And then just last week, there were 3 items on the agenda. The micro unit project was at City Council, which did get approved in the end, at Aston Street. And then on the consent agenda were the Affordable Housing Plan and the Dogwood Grant. Upcoming is in a couple of weeks, 2.5 weeks, Haywood Street Community Development, their development over there on West Haywood Street. They have redesigned that project. It was on 2 parcels and it was 4 or 5 stories. They ended up securing a 3rd parcel to the north, and they are and this is partly, I think, maybe largely driven by construction costs. They had a concrete podium that they were building on top of. And it was just, I think, not becoming viable, as we were talking about earlier, viable projects. So they are spreading that building out. So it'll be a 3-4 split with 3 at the front on Haywood Street facing the neighborhood, which I think will be more acceptable to the neighbors. Folks were really concerned about the impact, the visual impact of that building on their neighborhood. And then they have a parking lot to the side instead of behind the building. And if you, just as a reminder, that West Haywood piece of land is kind of above 240. So it's a hill slanting down to the highway, which also I'm sure increases construction costs. So, so that their conditional zoning will be at City Council on August 22nd. They have also, as a part of these changes, they've requested some changes to their loan, not the terms of the loan, but the kind of affordability. They had different, and I can go find it pretty easily, but they had 3 bands of affordability, and they're actually requesting that all the units be affordable at 80%, but they will be reserving 90% of the units, so 38 of the units for voucher holders. So that will really reach 30 to 50% AMI. It gives them a little bit more flexibility. And then 3 units will be 3-bedroom units for 80% AMI. They've also, a part of these changes, the number of units is going from 45 units total to 41. So the per unit subsidy goes up a little bit, but it's still well within our policy bounds and seems reasonable. There is participation in this project from Dogwood and Buncombe County as well, just as a reminder. So that piece of this project will be at HCD on Monday, August 21st. And that meeting just got changed to, it was at 2 o'clock, now it's 1:30 because there's an event happening later. So that's when HCD will be this month. And then the next night, it will be at City Council. Any questions about that, or? I'll keep going. And then lastly, as I said earlier, the missing middle studies wrapping up. There is a workshop this Friday from 4 to 7 p.m. because I know you all need something to do on a Friday afternoon and evening. I'm sure Scott will be there, right? Maybe. And I don't want to go into your update, but so I will stop there. But I will be there as well, volunteering. And I'll let Emily and Scott come and give that update when we get to it.
Great. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Sasha. Scott, are you ready to talk to us about missing middle?
Sure, and Emily, chime in if I miss anything. But so just as a reminder, Emily and I are members of the Missing Middle Advisory Working Group. We're representing AHEC, and we met virtually with the consultants and city staff last Thursday, the 27th. to get a brief presentation on their draft report on barriers. The report that just came out, and I suppose Emily, I don't know, I guess we should share that with the group. It's still very much in a draft form, but very quick overview of it. It's 3 basic levels: housing need analysis that kind of repeats a lot of the things that were have been in the Bowen study and other findings. Talking about missing middle ready locations, so looking at both the comp plan and zoning districts, and then of course chapter 3 is looking at zoning barriers. And just a couple of quick tidbits that I've pulled, just glancing at both the presentation, the posters that they'll plan to present at the study or at the event at the Civic Center, and from the report. A couple of quick things that they note, accessory dwelling units right now, they're restricted to single family homes and they're capped at 800 square feet. They were noting that currently there's a 20-foot landscape buffer required between single family and multifamily zones. So there's a question about, do you really need a buffer between residential and residential? And also they note in the report that we've got about a 97.4 rental occupancy rate. So pretty darn full. So definitely all things pointing to just the need for more supply at all price points, at any price point. As Sasha had mentioned, tomorrow is the open house. I plan to be there, both representing AHAC and also just the larger advisory working group. And we've kind of been tasked with, posting ourselves at the posters to try and answer questions. And I've been trying to look over the materials as fast as I can to become more conversant in them. But that's just a kind of a quick summary of what's going on. And Emily, if you've got anything to add, I'd welcome hearing from you as well.
Yeah, the only thing I have to add is that, and Sasha had sent this out maybe a couple weeks ago, it's a renter survey, and they're still gathering information from any renters that in our community. So send that out if you can. I think that perspective will be really helpful. That was one of the perspectives that they were missing thus far in the study. And Scott, you think that we should send out the draft? I mean, it seems like they're looking for feedback from anybody who's willing to read through the 90 pages. So,
Badilla, is that okay? Badilla, is he listening?
Sorry, what was the question?
Is it okay to share that draft barriers memo?
No, the draft memo isn't really ready for the public. So this is really for
Okay.
us to clean up. This group can certainly review it, but it's not ready for the public because it has so many missing things and items that need to be filled in still.
So what exactly is the agenda for Friday's meeting?
It'll be an open house from 4 to 7, so people can come at any time. We'll have a series of 5 different stations, each one with various posters that ask questions. So people can read through to understand the history and the topic and to provide input. So it's interactive. There'll be staff there to answer any questions. And so it's kind of, like a self-guided tour, so to speak, with staff around to provide any input and dialogue.
So we're not at a point, Badilla, of actually having recommendations yet. Is that fair to say, or it's
That's
kind of?
definitely fair. Yes, there are no recommendations at all yet. They're just starting to work on that, and it'll start in full force after the workshop, the open house. Then they'll start doing that, and I believe the sub-consultants are starting to work on the displacement risk analysis. But together, between that and the recommendations, we should be getting them in about a month in draft form.
Did you say so? So you said for the draft report, it's okay to share with us, just not to put out to the public.
Yeah, I don't think it's, it's not ready for the public.
Okay.
They
Yes,
would be, they'd be confused, like why aren't certain things filled in yet? Like insert image here, type of a thing.
Sure. Yeah. I guess if one of you want to disperse that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah.
So Vanilla, after this is accumulated, all the information, what's the next step at that point?
Well, after the draft is cleaned up, it'll be ready for the public to look at the draft. I guess at that point, it'll be the final memo on the barriers to infill. The next step will be reviewing the draft recommendations that we should get in about a month. And that should be responding to further input that we get from the open house tomorrow, as well as, anything else that they develop.
And then it'll go to city council at some point?
I don't know. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I suppose it would go to council at least as a report. I don't know if it needs to be adopted. But we can have a discussion about that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so now we're going to jump to kind of a report on the Build Task Force, which is Barry Bialik and myself. And Barry, do you want to talk about what you've been doing? And then I'll talk about what I've been doing.
Okay, sure. Yeah, thanks. I mean, a couple of updates that are, related, things that have kind of grown out of AHAC and Build. Yesterday I did the UDO amendment for flag lot changes to open up more buildable lots in the city. So that went through P&Z, was passed by P&Z with the ask that it go through some technical review before going to city council. But I'm hoping I can share the study, and I can share the study and what was put together. But the net result could be the opening up of 12,000 building lots in the city that are small, that could be help bring price point down, which is what the goal is. So that's one thing that's kind of grown out. I've used the example. One of the examples when I was speaking was our house cost studies that we look at, that there's reports I prepare about house costs, and that we started tracking land and realizing that there's no land less than $125,000 in the city, and that there's a need to open up more. So this was a tool. I think there will be a future, there'll be an opportunity with that. Like I don't know how we, Margie and Andy might want to work it on to, a future agenda to discuss what kind of incentives or rebates or something, some kind of incentives for how some of these new potential flag lots that could open up, or cottages could be affordable housing or workforce housing incentives. I know we don't have really any financial incentives for workforce housing, but in the UDO does have a base incentives or fast tracking if it's affordable housing. I don't know if there's something that would be something to look at to see how that could apply to the possibility of new lots coming on. But that's the piece on that. So it's kind of in motion. The other thing I'd share, and I think everyone who supported that, it was I had people from the committee who wrote letters and came out to support. We actually had endorsement letters from the Board of Realtors, from the Home Builders Association, and from the restaurant group. So I think that that all the voices of support really helped it get the attention and move through P&Z. So thank you on that. I'll update on two. I can, if you want, Margie, I can update on the two housing trust fund applications that I put in. Okay. So the one that was approved and moving through, that I'm working on is the Stewart Street cottages, which was, kind of in the news yesterday with all the drug needle cleanup we had to do on that site. So that's kind of where that was. That's an acre. We're putting 10 houses on. There's a housing trust fund loan that'll be for part of the construction, and then once the construction is done, we have, I think it's about $500,000 that we can turn over and create a down payment assistance program for. So what I'm doing in the beginning is we're getting kind of the site ready. You know, the site was had a lot of drug needles on it, so we cleaned that up. One thing that also really helped is I heard how, you know, there's a needle exchange program that was just 2 blocks from it, so people would get their needles and go shoot up. So I believe the housing authority, someone had asked them to not do that there on that property anymore, and that has really helped. Like, yeah, just telling them don't do it there has really helped. So now that the site is cleaned up from needles and we've clear cut around the street, so there's nowhere to hide behind to shoot up. We're now moving forward with kind of our development plan for that. So that would be the next step. And it's just active lots. So we'll be going right to building permit. We'll probably be doing the first 4. What I'm working on is trying to line up who the buyers will be. So meaning that I've spoken with Anna at the Land Trust. She and I actually spoke for 45 minutes yesterday about setting aside some of the 10 for land trusts so that they would be land trust identified. And so we're looking at like who their specific, like not their specific buyers, but what the buyers that she has in her queue and what their needs are. So how we can try to line up the product. So, I'm going to do that. And then also going to sit down with HACA about the people who are on the voucher program, like who are going through the voucher program for using the vouchers for mortgage home ownership. But what I'd really like to do is try to identify the people who could be living there before, we'll start the construction, but it'd be good to have kind of get the people ready now so that if it takes a year to build, then we're creating the right product for them. So that's what we're working on with that. But we're going to start, we're going to start fencing off the property and start construction over there really soon. Now that my team's not afraid to go to the site. So it looks, it's looked a lot better over there. So that's one. The other one is the Oak Hill, which is the city-owned property that we made a proposal for. That council at the meeting asked staff to, work on negotiations with us for that. We've had a public meeting with the community to get some input. We also met with Emma Potter group last week. Sasha and I went there. And again, I kind of would like almost that's a mixed project of rental and homeownership. And, waiting, the first thing we're waiting for, there's an environmental piece the city has ordered, and we're waiting for that to come back before I really spend any time or invest any funds into it. So as soon as that comes back, our goal would, again, similar to the Stewart Street, it's kind of looking at a big project where my goal in the end of it with the rentals isn't to own the rentals. My goal is to kind of identify the partners that we would essentially be developing it for. So same thing with Land Trust, same thing with maybe Emma Potter. We even talked about the idea of how we can work with them, that they could own some of them. So there's, I think once we have clearance or understand, and the city has moved past the environmental issues that they have concerns about, then we can really look at like how we're going to break this up. But my plan is to kind of develop the property as where the mixed rental and ownership, where some of the groups are identified, ahead of time. So that would be the plan for that. But we're just kind of in a holding pattern at the second, waiting for the environmental to come back.
Okay. Sasha, any comments on that? I know you're working with Barry on that, so.
No. There's a lot to do on both ends, I'm sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I have done. The Community Housing Development Group tasked AHEC with looking at the LaWeege policy and kind of doing a deep dive and trying to find out where we could make it better. Do we really need it? What could take its place? What are the barriers that we run into, developers run into all the time? So I put together some questions based off comments that we've had in our AHEC group, and I sent it out to 14 developers. There's 4 local developers that work in this type of arena, and then 10 developers that are building in the city, but they're not from the city. So that went out this week, and I have asked for the information to come back by next Wednesday. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. This is vacation time, so you never know if you're going to get it back exactly when you want it. But when we get the information back, I'm going to share it with AHAC, and we'll put together some type of a, something for HCD so that they can look at it and see what's literally coming from developers that are working in the city. So we're hoping that's going to give us some good information before we start working with the consultants to really see what we can do with Luigi and how it can work better for all participants. And it's also, I talked a lot about vouchers in these questions, so we'll get a lot of feedback, I think, on, if you get fair market rate value, is there some other issue that we don't know about as to why you would not take vouchers? So. So let's talk about, what's coming up, future agenda items. We're running it. We've got, since we didn't have that presentation, we actually are running with some excess time on it. But there's some events coming up that we talked about. And Sasha, you want to go over those events?
Oh, sure. I mean, we've talked about Missing Middle. I don't feel a need to say more about that. I know this is after your next meeting, but late September, there's the Affordable Housing Fair over at the Realtor's office. I say lots are, I just want to make sure people know what we're talking about. 21 Restaurant Court, just off Tunnel Road. There's not a panel this year. So it's booths of all kinds of different great things, realtors, bankers, service providers. I do think they're providing a lunch off of a food truck if you want to go, I think. And I guess maybe most importantly, we've got 2 openings for AHAC seats. The closing date for applications is August 27th. And so reach out to folks you think should maybe apply, and I don't know if you all want to discuss that at all. But.
Andy?
I'm just going to echo what Sasha just said about open seats. It's a really important time for AHAC to be as representative of the community as we can be going into this affordable housing plan. The people who are on AHAC as this plan moves forward, and then who become the folks who will have a key role in oversight of the plan and implementation and setting priorities and all of those things that are in our in the AHAC charter. These 2 open seats right now are a really great opportunity to bring some people on who will be leaders in the creation of this plan, and then still be around to oversee how the plan rolls out and is implemented. And so I would just, if you've got people who are thinking about, AHAC, or if you have people who you think really would be an important voice to have at the table on that, there's probably never an unimportant time to have good folks on this committee, but this is a particularly important time to fill those seats with folks who can provide sustained leadership and really help us represent the community in the adoption and implementation of this plan.
Padilla, do you want to have something you had your hand raised, and then Barry?
Yeah. I just want to add, I believe Planning and Zoning Commission is looking for some commissioners as well, and I think it's related to your work and similarly important. So spread the word for that as well.
Okay, Barry.
2 things actually. Do you know, Padilla, actually, because I think the P&Z one is passed. I think that unless they're going to reopen it, because I heard they didn't really have applicants, but the P&Z applications, I believe, were already due, and
Oh, it may have passed. I'm not sure. I was talking to
Okay.
Joe, who seemed to imply that they don't have enough applicants. So I don't know if
Yeah.
that means they're going to have to open it again or what.
Yeah, it may. But what I was going to say about the AHEC seats, if you want, because our charter kind of talks about what the makeup is supposed to be. I don't know if you want to identify who we should look for, and then to maybe even like have each of your committees kind of work on, because I think the seats pretty much like if it's like a small builder like me, and then I think it's Dewana's seat. So I don't know if like you want each of the committees to focus on trying to find people, or how you want to handle it. But I think it's worth talking about what are the seats you want to fill, so we can try to target those.
Antoinette?
I was just going to go back to the P&Z discussion. I will say that the applications have closed, and we will be conducting interviews on the 22nd at boards and commissions.
Sasha, can you tell us which categories, because we have realtors, bankers, construction, all kinds of things of that nature. So,
I was just pulling that up. Let me.
okay.
Here's what it says. And of course, these are not designated seats, right?
Right.
So these are just suggestions. Somehow we have the Housing Authority listed twice. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but
Okay.
I think one thing we haven't had for a while on the committee is someone from the neighborhood associations. And I would think particularly legacy neighborhoods would be great to have on the committee.
What about the philanthropic community?
sorry.
We don't really have anybody on that currently, I don't think. So that's certainly something for all of us to think about and hopefully get people to apply in the next couple of weeks. So again, it's closing on August 27th. So you've got about 3 weeks to work on that. So, so do we have any other upcoming things that we want to talk about before I ask about public comment? No? Okay. Do we have any public comment, Sasha?
There's no one in the queue and we did not receive any public comment.
Okay. Well, unless there is any other business that we need to do, we're going to be adjourning early. And we appreciate everybody being here. And so I will adjourn this meeting. Bye.
Hey, and thank you, Connect Team, for that. That was really fantastic. I really enjoyed seeing that. And I know how much work put into that. And I thank you so much.
Emily, yeah.
It was Emily.
Emily and Andy, but yeah, definitely big special things to Emily. Great work.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks,
everyone.
Okay, bye.
Nice job, Margie.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Good luck with your daughter. And I'll call you early next week. Are you going to be in the office, you think? Oh, next week? Okay,
Yep.
sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.